put our heads together.
Good morning. This is Taveau DRC with Pam Lowy. And Pam Lowy asked me, this is called random questions. So she's going to surprise me. She brought something today, and I had read something on my part alone, before I came. And it turned out it complemented each other. So I'm going to ask Pam to first share her testimony about why we're doing this. And then we can read the scripture after that.
Okay. I met T in Panera Coffee Shop, and I'm not the most outgoing person in the world, but I finally said, I got to talk to her. And so we've become friends over time, which is wonderful. My religious background is, I don't want to call it sketchy, but I grew up in a beyond Reform Jewish family. We never went to temple. I believe my father, who was not the best of people, let me say, was ashamed that we were Jewish. Looking back, I think that's the case. When I had friends who weren't Jewish, I had a little girl, I remember her name was Peachy. She lived down the street, and she was getting confirmed in the Catholic Church. And I was jealous because she got a new dress. And I thought, well, why can't I get confirmed? What's going on here? So I remember sitting on the back porch with my mother and her explaining to me that we were Jewish, we were not Christian, and the difference was Christian believed Christ was God, and Jews did not. But she also added, but we believe Christ was a really, really good man. And so I remember she got me a book about Jewish history. I think I was about 8 years old. And she told me the most important thing about any religion was to be kind to other people. So
Amen.
That was, so that's my background.
I agree. And see, this is it. Pam, I've said, and I say this to anybody and in ministers, I would encourage this too in these days. You got to let people hear God for themselves. So we'll speak what we believe is truth because we know the Lord, but she can hear it, and he's able to tell her through the witness of his Holy Spirit, God is really God, and we want Pam to hear it. So Pam is Jewish, and she is seeking Old and New Testament. She's curious, and it's fun, and we are just over time letting God, make her, she's deciding, because that's how it should be, no pressure, it's fun. Now, when Pam mentioned what she just mentioned, I wanted to say this. Okay. All right, Pam and I are the same kind. We are not going to Bible thump, or she would not thump you in any way either, but we like and respect all kinds of people groups, all kinds of faith. I have never had a trouble with anybody who is not a believer at all, and I believe, and Pam's daughter, who is more Jewish up in somewhere else, her family goes to temple, but they had, tell them about if you don't mind, tell them about their experience. They invite we believe people are equal humans. You got to hear the Lord about the Messiah or not.
Yeah, my daughter turned out to be pretty religious, not Orthodox. I think it's a Reformed temple that she joined, and my granddaughter had a bas mitzvah, and both my granddaughter and grandson there went to Hebrew school. My grandson still is. And I had not been to a bas mitzvah for years. I'd gone to a few friends when I lived in Chicago. And this one, my daughter had said she loved the rabbi. And it was a wonderful ceremony. And it was people, my grandchildren's father there was raised Catholic. And there were a lot of friends who weren't Jewish, a lot of, Christians, Catholics, and I think Muslims too, because this is New York City, and she had friends.
I can get there. I really can. It's the heart on the people, in the people, and their own kind of instruction, it's the respect factor and the love of humankind that we're after. That's what we really like.
So the rabbi, she was wonderful. She was so eloquent, and she was so welcoming to everyone who was there. So you didn't have to be Jewish, you could be anything. Everyone was welcome there.
Exactly, that's how I feel.
There was just this sense of community in the room. And what was very nice, my husband isn't Jewish, and my granddaughter's father isn't, and his mother isn't, but they all had roles in the ceremony. There were some that they couldn't do, I guess, because they weren't Jewish, but the rabbi, found, like, the other grandmother went up, and I believe there's a case that the Torah is in, and she opened it, and so she had a role. And at the end of it, my husband and my son-in-law opened it to replace the Torah. And it was just really lovely, the whole thing.
Yeah, well, I love that. I love that respect and also community. I really believe in that. I feel like society, to be preserved, gentlemen and ladies and men and anybody else, is going to have a modicum of respect for anybody and everybody. Let me say this. You need to know, because if you're a teacher and a Christian, it is not respecting people, whether they know the Lord, love the Lord, or not. Any faith, anything. It's about God creating everybody equal and wanting everybody to know him, but to also love each other and then not have dogma, hate speech, all this stuff that goes on. So we're pro how you have a normal side. Bring normal. You respect, that didn't mean you condone or you agree with anybody or you endorse. You don't have to endorse me. They don't have to endorse me or you either if you're that kind. So I love it when Pam talks, because that's how I feel. I feel low-key, down-to-earth, and a silent, but just a silent witness is effective in these days. There's too much fighting and dogma, politics, and things. Anyway, we're getting off the topic. Let's get on our topic. Let's go to what you were saying today. Or did you finish?
Well,
did you have
actually, there was
one
other thing
please do.
that came up that I do have trouble with, is that, a lot of my family is in New York City. And so I'm from Chicago, so I think all these New Yorkers, right?
Yeah.
But they have this prejudice towards people from the South, towards
okay.
And so I think the prejudice goes both ways, and
she's telling us things that up in the North, where she was from, Chicago, and then New York City, there is a prejudice toward the South. Okay, let's keep on.
Toward the South. In fact, at the I won't go into it, but I find that disturbing too. And I guess I should tell you the story. In growing up in Chicago, I remember hearing, we're Chicago Jews. We're not New York Jews. We are. We are not, and that's the stereotype, pushy and loud. We are not like that. We are Chicago Jews. So I think there's prejudices.
Everybody's got one issue against somebody. Yeah.
So and I think it's important to recognize that.
So you had shared this about the Southern stereotype.
Yeah.
Up there in the North, that part of the North.
Yeah,
and what was it? You told me it's sort of humorous, sort of a.
What did I say? They're racist, they're ignorant, which is surprising because my son-in-law's from Louisiana, but just that stereotype about Southerners and people from other parts of the country. I think it's the idea that some people think they know a lot more than others, and I find that difficult to.
So what is after you all have moved down here in the South, what is your finding, your discovery?
I have found that this, at least here, there's more integration than there was in, I don't know about New York, but we lived in the Boston area, and that people of different backgrounds, really do better here.
I think they get along. That's what I like too. I really like it. I feel respect in the general atmosphere.
Yeah.
So far.
So I just.
Yeah, well, that's good. We're walking the walk and talking the talk, it sounds like out here, down here. Because there is a difference, a big difference in nationality and a difference in, if you're a nationalist or if you're political or if you're kind of, race, Jew, Hindu, whatever, Muslim, Christian. There's a difference in that quality of people who are like that in a group. All groups are different. So you watch for the individual that, you respect them all. But there's some that are more congenial and hostable, and they are not on their agenda at all times. We want you to have your call and your agenda, but I like the respect that she represents and that she found this down here respectful.
Definitely, and people I found, I don't want to talk in stereotypes either, but are very friendly in general here, and I remember my husband, I'm maybe getting off track, has a number of medical issues, including Parkinson's, and he got in a situation where he was leaving a doctor's appointment and his phone was out of juice, and he got very frazzled about what to do. And one of the people at the doctor's office called for him. They called an Uber, so he went to meet it, and the Uber wasn't coming, and he got more anxious about that. And so a lady in the coffee shop near he was said, I'll call them again, you sit down in the shade. And then after a few minutes, a customer came out of the shop and said, don't worry, I'll take you home. It wasn't that far. And we talked about it later, and Bill was saying, that would never happen in Massachusetts where we live. There's just suspicion, and not that it's they're very good people up there too, but it's just that attitude that, hey, we'll give you a hand.
Well, one thing I would like to say I've traveled a lot, lived in Metroplex, cosmopolitan, rural, local things, that when I came here as a servant leader ministry, I found, it is my opinion, that God's people, including the churches, have done their work, because this is probably the most respectful community area, and servant leader, wise, smart, but it's just so calm. It's such a good neighbor. That's what I like. Friendly, smart, good neighbor area. And Pam is one of them. So, and Bill. So thank you, Lord. But anyway, let's get on with our.
Let's get on. Yeah,
we're going to have a random theology question. All right, Pam, what did you bring today?
I was skimming through in preparation for this.
Okay.
And this is in Proverbs 24.
Okay.
And I have the King James Version here, and the title is Fear the Lord. So I thought, okay, let's see what this is about. So the first line was, be not thou envious against evil men, neither desire to be with them. So I thought that is, so applicable to our situation these days.
Definitely.
So I think particularly of politics when I read this, and of cult-like groups. So I thought that was quite interesting.
So what I thought when she read that, because I had brought, because it's in my car, the New King James. She had the King James, and hers was Fear the Lord. So I read down to say, where's the fear of the Lord? Let's bring that out. So over in verse 21, it says, read that one, because there are two different interpretations. Verse 21.
Okay.
This is what it meant in this context.
Right. So this is 24, verse 21. It says, "My son, fear thou the Lord and the king, and meddle not with them that are given to change." So I am not quite understanding this. I understand it saying fear the Lord. The king is the ruler.
Okay.
And to me, what if it is an evil king?
Okay. Well, when I heard that comment, I'm going to read it also. "My son, fear the Lord and the king. Do not associate with those given to change." All right. So the king part. The king is an authority, and I would like to point out that the writer of the Proverbs is the king himself.
Right, okay, so
in case he has a need to get that over. But really, in real life.
And this one was a good one.
Yeah. So it says, fear God and the king. God first, the king second. So in a nation where you have all kinds of people with all kinds of responsibilities, there are king types in your business and ministry, some, with more gravity and sober control or authority. But then you can have kings, like she said, that are evil or doing good. So it says, fear the king. Why? Not have, there's a holy fear of the Lord, reverential respect. That's for anybody, no matter what you think about them in the governing sense or the home sense or the office. You have a reverential respect because of God for the office. That didn't mean you could endorse or like their behavior. But that helps society a decent respect, a little modicum of respect in the general population. So the king is representing authority, governing power. And some of the people can have very sage and wise and right governing power. Otherwise, they can have a lot of totalitarian, all this stuff, misfits. But the issue, it's got power behind it. It's got a power which could be governmental power of might and, people, employment, levels and all those things. And you can have people that are sneaky or deceptive and cruel with that, but that's part of the society. The land has got the authority of the king. If you walk in, you defer, you're not on their turf, but it could be a person that's like a pastor. It could, the smaller king, and you can have a person who's a giant pastor. You can have a person who's a real king from another nation, ambassador, but it's respect and a holy fear of reverential respect. Indeed, for anybody that's higher rank than you, really. That's modest. That doesn't mean you don't want to be taken advantage of. That's a whole other topic. We're talking about basic, what does that mean?
Yeah, and I still have questions about that.
Okay, what is
I was thinking of, I know this is from the Bible too, I'm not sure where, render under Caesar's what is Caesar's and God's which is God's.
Yeah, render under Caesar's what is, yes. And so that is the office of the king in action, the government having their tithe, not their tithe, but their due of their taxes, their income. So that would be a matter also of the fear of the Lord and the fear of God and fear of man to do what the government says, to abide by the government law. In fact, it says, I think it's Timothy, it says to pray for those in authority so it will go well in the land.
Well, I can agree with that one.
And we need, that's right.
These
So
days,
word cursing authority, if you don't like them or, they think they're really wrong, is not helpful. It's not empowering. You want to pray for them. And God, if there is a bad kind of government, you pray, God is the revealer of secrets, Daniel 2:28, he'll expose it, corruption, that type of thing. So we are pro hearing God, we're pro all kinds of humans, and we're pro the government, we're pro authority, but we always watch out for everybody. There's nobody perfect under the sun, not us, only Jesus Christ, only God. Now, the law is one thing. There is the types of law. There is the law of the nation, to respect it, to go by it, to submit to it. Then there is the law of the Lord, which is supposed to be light, not stone throwing. So let's get back to Psalm 24.
So
There's some
I
questions.
still have let me see, and meddle not with them that are given to change. Does that mean change is bad?
Okay.
I don't
So
quite
given
understand
to
that.
change, that means they're flighty,
Oh, okay.
phony,
I see what you mean.
manipulative,
Okay.
sly, ghosting.
Okay.
People
Got
that
it.
don't respect the Lord, they don't respect you, they don't respect relationships.
Okay.
Maybe they respect their time, their money, their being in control. You know what I mean? There is a given to change, I would say shiftless or whatever, flighty, not stable, not meaty, not solid. And that could be a person, male or female. Okay, rich or poor.
Okay. Now I get it. It was the word change that threw me a little bit.
Okay, that didn't mean you don't. See, the other part is you don't want to be a stick in the mud either.
Yeah.
You want to be divinely flexible. I call my teaching word is divinely flexible. You, if you're a Christian believer, and if you're hard, you hear God, and if He says go that way, do things differently, you do it. It's like what is like Enoch in Genesis 5. It's like Ezekiel's wheel. Ezekiel's wheel said, "Oh, go this way," and it went. The vision of the wheel and go that way. It's not flighty, but it's not unstable. It's hearing God and being open. You know, I would say the servant of the Lord is open to being, I'm available. That's all it is. Okay? So let's go to the next part.
Which one were you interested in?
Well, we talked about the fear. I had asked, I said, you know, if hers had fear of the Lord at the top of chapter 24 of Proverbs. I thought, where's that mentioned? I didn't see it until I got down to 21, and that's a really valid verse. Let's talk about some of the things that lead to that. Like, all right, just read. So
just continue.
Yeah. We'll go no farther than 6. Let's say.
So 2 under 24 is, for their heart studieth destruction, and their lips talk of mischief.
Yes, that's good. I'll read it in my translation.
Okay.
Oops. Here we go.
Yeah.
It says, don't be envious of the evil man, as we said. Don't desire to be with them. Don't be a desire of their club. All right. For their heart devises violence, and their lips talk of troublemaking.
Oh, okay. So interesting little
it is. That's why it's important to
look at both. Yeah.
Yes, it is. So their hearts, they sitting around amongst themselves in the club, the humans club. And they, got time on their hands. They're special, and so they're, thinking of how can we get the next material possession? How we can own everybody? How can we get the future to be ours? So there's this culture of planning, could be good, but plotting as well. I was thinking, dare I say it, a lot of people that are young people are in a certain kind of culture, a club in their environment. Racist or not, but it's a club where they are prone to be shot because of their hanging out in the wrong culture. That happened just this past couple of days ago. All right. So there is a certain kind of music that lends itself to that. There's a certain type of talk. There's a certain type of things that maybe they have their tennis shoes or their look or their, jewelry, their finery, their money that would draw people into hanging out and acquainting with evil men, young men, older men, Christian men, non-Christian men. All right. So when I think of the murder, the shooting, the drive-by in the last 2 days online of a culture, the culture that's big has music in it and, rap and all this stuff. And it could be rock. It could be anybody's culture. But I saw this person was drawn to it. It's a big reminder of now in the population.
Which are you?
I'm trying to get too descriptive or name names, but there was a person, a young man, who was a rapper, and he was mowed down, and he was in the culture, and I know how cultures work, especially young culture, because he promoted him. He was out there in it, and somebody found his location, and he did things that triggered it on his opposition. They triggered things by doing stuff openly, and they shot him. So that, when I think of that because of yesterday, I'm thinking of what is very pertaining. Don't be envious, male or female. Don't be envious of those who got the goods, who look great. It looks like they're in charge, because the desire to be with them is the downfall if you get sucked in by osmosis. And it just is this is exactly what was bothering, it really concerned me for the young people or anybody. Because this culture they're sitting around, and this is a giant culture, really. Their culture of this thing that happened yesterday, the drive-by, all right, is big in many cities, big. And it's influential, and it's powerful. And it is almost like a cult, all right? So their heart in these certain cultures, not just that one, even witch watchers could do it, I guess, but in the Christian sense, but their hearts are devising violence to get their way. And their lips are talk of troublemaking. So you can have lots of things, but for some reason she brought this. I think it's so inspiring because that is exactly what's going on. And the market is big for this. It really is. Any comments? I didn't know I'd go into that one.
Yeah, I think, and it's through all groups, I think.
Yeah, and see, that's just because like, my heart is open. These are African Americans that was going on with this one. My heart is open with compassion for people to live and be themselves. It really concerns me, as a mom type as well. But I also know this is not just that. It could be all sorts of things.
It's all sorts.
It's
of
material wealth is usually the bottom line, and feeling good because of pumped up because you're prosperity because you're wealthy or something. Esteem. All right, let's go because of our time. Let's just go down to number 4 today, and I'll skip over to the other one.
Okay. You want me to skip 3? I'll just go to 4.
Do 3 and 4. We
Okay.
do both of those.
Through wisdom is a house builded, and by understanding it is established.
Okay, good. And then.
Okay, and 4 is, and by knowledge shall the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches.
Okay, very good. It ties right in. So it says, through wisdom, a house is built. Your market is built. Your house for your business, your cases that you put together to get income, your ministry, your literal house, your vacation house. All right, through wisdom, a house is built. Well, if you've got a call for a future position, power, and governing or material income, you are considering how to do it and how to build it. And see, this young man, the youth, 26-year-old that was killed down in his day, he was working toward something bigger and better, he thought. So we want to make sure nobody gets violence, that you hear God. And that's the thing, a pure heart, it'll have to trust God as well. So the house, it says in this version, New King James, through wisdom, a house is built. Your literal house and your figurative house, even your spiritual house, okay? And your relationship, in a way. Because you gotta, if you go home, you can go home anywhere. Any size mansion or shack, whatever. But it's how happy it is. All right, that's what we want. Through wisdom and house, God's wisdom, pure wisdom and house is built, and by understanding it is established. Wisdom, God's wisdom, and understanding that is deep, intuitive, makes right choices, gets what it needs and gets what it wants eventually in the right manner, is got to come through time. By knowledge, the rooms are filled. See, this is what the young man, all these people want. They want their rooms filled. They want the palace. When back in the 90s, I remember when all this started, they had MTV, cribs, and Sweet 16 parties with $100,000, $50,000 cars. That was a lot of this, and lifestyles of the rich and famous came on, and that's what has really soaked our society.
I can't remember the exact
1996.
Quote. The eye of the needle quote.
Oh, better for a rich man.
Yeah. How does it go?
It's harder for a rich man to go through to go to heaven than a camel to go through the eye of the needle. Is that right?
That's the one that comes to mind. Yes.
All right. Well, I found, ironically, in the last 2 years, I've read what that means. Over in Jerusalem, there is a gate called the Eye of a Needle.
Oh, interesting.
It is. And to get through that needle, if they had a camel filled with all the possessions, a camel was just packed down, a load of possessions, they would have to take off the possessions, set them down so the camel could get through. Then they would feed the things through. So that is it's better to go in alone with nothing and not miss it, not make a mistake. So we heard the illustration. So the things of the world are cumbersome. They can be bothersome. They can be time consuming. So you and God, only you and I would know what that meant to you and me. But that is the perception of what she's saying. You know, what this was saying, the eye of a needle. Many times, and Jesus had a parable, this rich young ruler came up and said, you know, I've done everything right. I was perfect, obeying all the commandments, all the laws of my youth. And the Lord said to him, unless you're willing to give up everything to the poor, then, you know, you got to go what your priorities are. So it's the Lord and then stuff. Really, Lord, yourself, your people around you, and then stuff last. All right. Any comment on that? So through supernatural wisdom, what is that? Supernatural wisdom, it says in Proverbs 2, when I'm putting in a commercial for fear of the Lord. Mm-hmm. All right, in Proverbs 2, to teach it. Proverbs 2, 1 through 5, it says, if you cry out for the wisdom, more of the wisdom of God, the supernatural wisdom, if you cry out and seek it more than you want silver and gold, finances, then you'll get it. And everything else beside honor. That's, you know, basically it. So we want motives, God's heart and industry. All right. So let me slip over to our other side if you got time.
Yeah,
I've got time.
A little time. Yeah.
Okay. So it says, by knowledge the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches. Listen, no matter how disappointing you think you are, you have no clue what God is about to do and can do, and all of us, but it's going to be his way. Now let me skip over to what I brought. I didn't know Pam would have this verse, but I had waken up to Psalm 127. And I won't go through all of it, just the first verse that pertains. It says, unless the Lord builds the house, this is Taveau version of it. This is the King James, New King James right here. Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman wakes in vain, and so forth. It's vain to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for he gives his beloved sleep, and so forth. But let's talk about the first one. Unless the Lord builds the house, what does that mean? That means unless, if you're a Christian or if you're a believer, unless you consult with the Lord, even more than once, even daily, even for a time, unless it's really called of, revealed, told to you by the Lord, whether it's a ministry, your life, your fortune, whatever it is, building a house, do I build one? Can I get a house? Unless the Lord builds the house, that means unless the Lord tells you and affirms it and confirms it and reveals it to you, unless you do it his way, it won't pay off. It'll be in vain. That's the main one. So unless the Lord builds the house, they labor, the hard work, endurance, trials, treachery. Unless the Lord does it, hey, so let's do it his way. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm having... That one is hard for me to. Well,
Pam, you know, I have a long history of understanding how the Lord speaks, or how you can be corrected by the Lord, or your relationship. So Pam is, you know, learning, or on the road, the journey. So when I think of this, it kicks in as my experience that I know in my call. You know, when you're called to ministry, my call was to ministry in the 80s. 70s to study the body of Christ, which I've always done. Then in the 80s, late mid-80s, I was called to have my own public ministry. And I heard, oh, it'll be a national ministry. Oh, it'll be this, and, you know, all this stuff. It looks like the opposite. On the journey, though, I met the Lord, I met Paul, I met myself, I met more than I could ever meet, understanding. But the Lord would say about a prophet in his timing. And see, it's about him, not me. It's about the narrow road. It's about there is no hare and tortoise in ministry, even though they will make you think that. It's about hearing God today. Do I do it or I don't? So this is my version of it. Mm-hmm. All right. unless the Lord builds the call, if you're an office strength minister, a prophet, a national prophet, an apostle, or something that's a real office, a real teacher, a real minister, that he says, I want you there, you're valid, not playtime, then he can take whatever sweet time he wants to get you sifted and ready, like Paul. So understand, so on the journey, like Enoch, Genesis 5, walking and talking with God day, hanging out with God, he can slowly fashion you into whatever God needs you to do and let you know stuff in the meantime. And you can build houses and lands and lose them and all this stuff, go into mischief or not. But I'm looking from a long-term teaching on this, the long haul of my life. And I will say this to whomever, Noah was told, do this, build this boat by the Lord. But it took him 125 years of faith, even with injustice, to keep on going until one day it was full and God needed that boat to be ready, and it saved a lot of people. All right, so this is what we're looking at, short term and long term. So we're long term.
And I think there's literal and then there's figurative and metaphor. So I think in some ways, if I don't go literal, it's easier for me to kind of understand.
Yeah. See, Pam is learning. She is an author. She's very intelligent, lots of IQ. And so I love Pam. I love it with Pam because she really does understand literature and a lot of deep things, intellectual things, and takes it from the point of view of the Bible also, that as well, certain times. So that's good. Did I throw a curve in or?
No, I think.
See, that's it. The Holy Spirit, the Word of God, is practical. But then to some it will need to be inside or inner healing. It can be invisible. It can be, logical. It can look by faith, illogical. It's one day at a time. So let's sum this up and say, what have we got out of this? And nobody's perfect at this.
What have we got out of?
In other words, we've discussed frankly and then plainly about how to be led by the Lord. Be careful to build. Let God show you what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and let him reveal. That's my version of that. Psalm 121, verse 7.
Okay, I think that.
Is that good?
That's good.
All right.
That's good.
So any parting, closing comments?
No, but this has been fascinating as always. And probably want to close because I am so hot. I'm about to.
It is so hot down
It's
here.
so hot in here.
God bless you. He loves you. This is Taveau DRC, and we are representing Crossbed Unity Taveau Teaching Center that's open. If you have any questions, if you have any opinions, please write me at Crossbed Unity respectfully. God bless. Bye-bye.